Hi, everyone. Welcome to Barefoot with Spirit podcast show. I'm your host, Leanne, the Barefoot Medium, and I'm incredibly excited to connect with you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an international medium, intuitive criminal investigator, twin flame, and transformational coach who is blessed to connect people from all over the world with their loved ones who've passed over, as well as to channel guidance and insight to help you come into union with your twin flame and manifest what it is that your soul needs, wants, and desires in life. Now, before we get started, I'd like to just take a moment to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I stand and on which my guest stands, and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and First Nations people tuning in from all around the world. Now, kick off your shoes, take some beautiful deep breaths into your heart space, and step into this sacred container, this spiritual space, for a deep, intimate, and connected conversation with my guest, Sue Erhart, on losing your critic for good and reclaiming your spirit. And I am so excited about this topic. Now, I'll just introduce Sue briefly. Sue is an executive at a large corporation where she leads the areas of legal compliance, risk management, and cybersecurity, and is also the creator of Practical Spirituality, where she writes and shares practical and useful advice on various topics that affect people's relationships with themselves. Sue is passionate about sharing her hard-earned lessons in life, empowering people and supporting people as they navigate their journey so they don't have to do things the hard way. And I absolutely love that. So welcome, Sue.
Thank you, Leanne. I'm delighted to be here.
Tell me a little bit about how you started on your journey and how you've come to be doing this work that you're doing.
So I think my journey started very early in my career. I'm a lawyer by training, and I was working in law firms and in corporate America. And I found I had a really strong perfectionist tendency and a really strong desire to do what was right and good in order to be loved. And I noticed that about myself. And I really worked a lot to dismantle a lot of that thinking. I saw it in a lot of people, and I saw it in myself. And so now I'm in what I would call the second half of life. And I've retired from my corporate position, but it very much informs much of what I do, because I can look at people who are in a job that is paying the bills, and I can connect with them and say, I see you, I hear you, and I know it feels like you're trapped, but you're not. But you're not. And your spirit will come and set you free. And that's where I am today. I'm set free, and I'm enjoying life in a completely second career that I never imagined, that I had no idea existed. And I'm just having joyful fun doing it.
Yeah. I love that you mention the perfectionism and the wanting to do right. As high achievers, we often have that perfectionist pattern. So I'm going to put my hand up and say, I have perfectionist tendencies that come in, and I'm conscious and I'm present to that. And, talk to me a little bit about how that showed up for you in your world.
So it showed up for me early in my career by perseverating on any mistake. Like even a conversation that I felt didn't go the way I wanted it to go, I found myself replaying it in my head. If I actually had a setback or failure, like a flub or just anything at all, it felt very difficult to shake. And I just found myself thinking way too much about what others thought of me, even though the rational part of me, honestly, the rational part of me said, this is silly. This is so silly to be wasting energy on this. And I say that because I find it's so interesting that the rational part of me was aligned to the spiritual part of me. And both of them were saying, this is not how you are meant to live.
Yeah, I love that. You know, perfectionist patterns show up in so many different ways for us in our world, and you know, it can be little things or big things in the workplace, in the personal life, in relationships, in connecting with ourselves, and really it does come back to that connection to self, and not feeling like we're good enough for whatever it is that other people perceive or expect, or other people or society or culture or whatever it might be expect us to be, or the perception that we have of that. So I really love how you talk about that.
Yeah.
And you know, talking about law and being in that legal profession, it is very much about right and wrong and yes and no and black and white. And you know, my background's criminology, and you know, I mentioned that I'm doing a PhD in that area, so I completely understand what that means. How did you work through, or heal or clear or become more present of how to change that pattern?
Mm-hmm. So, in our infinite universe, I think there are infinite paths. So, my personal path is that I use writing to really heal myself. So, I have done this for decades now, but I get up every single morning and I write. And I write in a way that I feel connects to my authentic self and to my divine guidance. And then I use that. I'm not saying that's the only way, I'm just saying that's one way to connect. And as I have done that, I have just healed all of my ideas that I need to prove myself worthy, or
Mm.
that I need to demonstrate that I'm enough. And I've really stepped into what I consider my true power, which is that I am enough and I am worthy.
Yeah. And it's really, we can go from that space of logically thinking that to actually knowing that and embodying that, which can be a really big leap for people. And you know, I'm also a big journaler, so I write, and for those of us who are high achievers and often overthink or overanalyze or intellectualize things,
Yep.
writing can be a really good way of getting into allowing your unconscious to share what's there, or the inner critic, and we'll talk a little bit about what that is, to share what's actually coming up and what the thoughts are and what the emotions are or what the actions are that are right or wrong or not enough or not blah blah blah. And then being able to actually step back from it and look with a different perspective and go, okay, that's what's playing out. That's what I'm looking at here. I wonder if I want to keep believing that or keep making that true, or, you know, is there a different way here? So I love that you talk about that. Talk to me about the inner critic.
So, Leanne, I just think the critic shows up for all of us. Okay. I really, really believe that. And it shows up in so many ways. The first, most obvious way is criticism of the self, which we've all experienced. And that's just a really obvious way. So I'll just start there. But the critic can also show up as criticism of others, which it likes to point itself at others because that alleviates the pain and suffering of the self. And so it does that.
Yeah.
But the critic shows up in a lot of other ways. For instance, I call the happy critic. I see a lot of people who pretend that they are happy and okay and upbeat when inside they are not feeling that okay, because they feel like they need to show up in society as okay. So the happy critic. I think there's also a critic that says, I call it the settler critic, meaning what I have is enough. I don't want more. I don't need anything more. I see this in a lot of women. Um, I'm settling for what I have. It's good. And
Mm.
I also see the critic showing up in people who care a lot about what other people think. And that too is the critic. So I use the term critic, but it's very broad. I mean, it's very broad and it shows up for each of us in different ways. But in so many ways, it keeps us small.
Yeah.
It keeps us stuck and it keeps us fearful, which is not how we were meant to live.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you distinguish those different aspects of the what's often referred to as the inner critic. And I often talk to my clients about, sometimes that inner critic will have a field day and start kind of running with the stories and
Yes.
blah, 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 blah. And it may be about yourself, or it may be about others, or it may be about, general things, whatever. It's how do we embrace that inner critic and accept that we have that? Because the more we push against that inner critic, the more it keeps it stuck and really embedded in our being and our way of being in the world, rather than going, hey, I'm having a day of criticism and I'm
Mhm.
gonna, talk to myself and see what my inner critic has to say. I'm going to
Mhm.
hear it out, and then I'm going to give it a big cuddle and a big hug and go, oh, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
I wonder and then stepping into another aspect of that, I wonder what it is here that I need to embrace more of, because really the inner critic is asking us or inviting us to embrace a different way.
yes. So, Leanne, I just believe everything in this universe is here to help us. It all is. Okay. It all is. So if you can stop for a minute and notice, for instance, where you are very critical of another person. Let's just let's use a real example. You're scrolling social media, and let's say it was me and I saw a woman who was very well dressed and very attractive, and I was critical of her.
Mm,
If I took just a moment to be self reflective,
mm,
I would see that instead I have a deep, buried want
mm.
to be a woman who is attractive and looks pulled together.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a wound.
Yeah.
And it's a wound I can heal by honoring the want and by saying, you person who I have criticized or judged, thank you. Thank you for showing me
Yeah.
where I have this want. And then here's the fun part. Here's the exciting part. I can honor the want.
Yeah.
I can start stepping into the want. So I'm here to tell you, I don't think critics are bad or
Mm,
wrong or a
mm.
mistake of the universe. I think they are literally information and it's up to us to capture it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love how you talk about them being information,
Mhm.
because our thoughts, our emotions, our actions, whether they're coming from that place of fear or that woundedness or that not enoughness or not worthy or whatever it might be, is simply information to support us to walk through a different doorway and a different way of being in the world. And it's an invitation from our spiritual soul self, our higher self, whatever it is you want to call it, to go, there's a bigger, more worthy, more enough version of you that you're being invited to step into and to be.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I see it as the great big divine continually nudging us like elbow, elbow. Here's what you want. Here's what you love. Here's
Yeah.
what you desire. Step into the want. Do that. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's just the most loving thing ever.
Yeah. And it can be a little bit of a hard journey for some people. And I want to bring that word in particular in, because one of the things you talk about is you wanting to share that advice and support others to not necessarily have to walk this path or this journey or navigate this journey the hard way. And I love that, because that's one of my things as well. So talk to me about the hard way.
Oh my gosh. Well, the hard way is being completely unaware and thinking the problem is everybody else. I mean, that's the hard way. I mean, and once you sort of step into this beautiful energy that says, it's not about them, it's about you. You embrace it. Um, so I wrote a book, Lose Your Critic for Good, and it's a really a deep process-oriented book that says anyone can step into their power by releasing the critic. And I believe that the critic is the single biggest thing standing between each of us and our soul connection. And if you can let go of that critic, which we all can, and I'll show you how. If you can let go, what takes residence in your system, in your psyche, is just this energy that is the natural you. And it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. And it guides you forward in the easiest and just most powerful way. I mean, I see it as stepping into your power, stepping into who you are. I see it as how we were meant to live. And so I am passionate about teaching others how to lose their critic for good.
Awesome. And I love that you talk about letting go of the critic, and walking through that process. I want to talk a little bit about that hard way and that kind of struggle and battle and being stuck, because I know a lot of listeners or viewers will be maybe in that space, whether it's with themselves or with a situation or an experience or a scenario that they have playing out with somebody else, where it's that kind of pointing the finger of blame energy, right? Mm-hmm. Rather than stepping back and reflecting. So, there is an easy way when we're connected to our soul, our divine self, mm-hmm. our higher self, our intuitive self, whatever it is that you want to call it. It's often our human self that battles that.
Yes. Yeah.
So how do you walk through that?
So I think the first step is really awareness. We each need to step into this awareness of who we truly are. Yeah. And we also need to step into an awareness that our thoughts are not who we truly are. Mm-hmm. And a little bit of that is education, Leanne. I mean, there are many people who that is new to them. That is a new concept. And I believe that you need to step through that understanding to begin to step back and say, there's a different way here. Mm-hmm. And I think particularly once you embrace the idea that everything external to you, every person, every situation, is something you are filtering through the lens that is you reclaim your power. I mean, I don't see this as negative or harsh. I see it as powerful. I see it as me saying, well, if I get to label this situation how I prefer to label it, that's my power. If I choose to see this interaction with this other human being as reflective of something of me, that's power. And I want to help other people move into their power, because I think that's how we're meant to live.
Yeah. And how do you do that? Can you give people some tips? And you mentioned being present and aware as that first part. How do we let go of that critic?
Well, so let me just so the first thing I'll say is my book is 28 days of essays and exercises that walk you through different ways. And each of us are so unique. So each exercise might resonate with people in different ways. But I'm going to just talk for a minute about one way that I feel is extremely practical and a way that all of us could embrace. And so many people I know work their day from a to-do list. They sit down and they say, here's all the tasks that I have to do. And they have a list and they work from that. And at the end of that day, they feel good or bad about themselves, depending on how they've managed that to-do list. Well, I am a proponent of saying a to-do list is a list of activities that you do not want to do. If you wanted to do them, you would remember to do them. So I do not suggest that you live your life giving your power to that list. So instead, I coach people and I teach people to create what I call a logbook. And that is a notebook where you start each day and you write down the date and you log what you did and how you felt. And you make it a point, you set an intent to capture the good moments. So a good moment might be the skies were blue and I felt good today. The sun was out and I felt great. And Leanne, what this does, if you keep up with a logbook where you log what you've done, not the undone, you've logged what you've done and you've logged how you feel, the brain that you have gets retrained because the critic is merely a habit of thought that skews negative, that looks for lack, and looks to prove that you're not worthy. And if you adopt a logbook habit, even for a few weeks, you will begin to see that life has much goodness to offer you and that you can retrain your brain to look for the good, to look for the wonderful, and to celebrate it. And it's something I am passionate about. And Leanne, I will finish this interview with you and I will write in my own logbook and say, I had a great conversation with Leanne. I felt empowered and confident. And I will write that down and I will savor it and prolong that feeling. And I will make sure that that feels good. And I will make sure that that outweighs, because there were points in my day where maybe I didn't feel that way. But I am consciously choosing the positive and I'm consciously reorienting my brain to look for them. And that's what I teach.
I love that. I do a similar thing and I connect in my morning routines with my intuitive, my higher self, my divine self, my soul self, whatever you want to call it. And I just ask to be shown where the flow is or where the energy is. And I set that intention because when the energy is built behind some of those actions that, we've already set some intentions, or some people might think of them as goals. We set intentions that help us move towards our goals, our visions, our dreams. And then the universe, our intuitive self, our divine self nudges us to take the actions and the steps that we're aligned with in that particular moment. And so I have a practice where I connect in each morning with my morning coffee, and it can be part of your everyday routine. And I love my coffee, so it brings that feeling for me to sit in presence with myself and awareness with myself. How am I feeling today? What do I feel like I'm aligned with? And where are the nudges today? And if I do that, then my day flows really beautifully and really amazingly. And then if something doesn't flow or kind of comes in, I have grace with myself.
Leanne, I completely agree. I too am someone who I sit with a delicious cup of coffee with cream and I savor it. And then I sit and I express an intent to say, bring forward what I need to hear today. And I write. And I then take action throughout my day, which I call intuitive next actions, where I look and say, like, what excites me? What interests me? Where do I want to go? And what I want to impress upon all of your listeners is that I wasn't always this way. I literally was someone working a job in corporate America, doing what was expected of her, pleasing the powers that be, and making sure that everyone else was happy. In fact, Leanne, I thought one of my greatest skills is that I could walk into a room and I could read what everyone needed from me and I could give it to them. And I thought, oh, that made me so, so, so successful. And it did, because I gave people what they needed, but I left myself on the table every time I did that.
Yeah.
And so I've now learned that my true power is anchoring to what I want, what excites me, what interests me, what my curiosities are, and to literally live life that way.
Yeah.
And I just want to get the message out to everyone and say, if I can do this, anyone can. Anyone can.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that, because, I was in senior management in a university environment, managing programs and courses and teachers and administrative staff in amongst that. And I did very much the same thing. And what I did was I taught people that it was okay to come to me or to give me more and more and more, and I would meet their needs.
Yes. Yes.
I taught them that. And so one of the beautiful, amazing gifts that I often share with people is my learnings around what my needs, wants, and desires are, and setting boundaries, and healthy boundaries, because they're about connecting and protecting my energy, not just protection, they're about connection as well. And I want to really impose that on people. And I've learned along my journey how to set really clear boundaries for myself and with others. And I so thank you, because we do teach people how we are and who we are in the world and who we're being. So that was one of my learnings as well, and it resulted in corporate burnout. And I know that there's people that will be listening or watching this episode that will relate to that. So there is a way forward, there is a way out, if you connect in with what you need, what you desire, and what you're passionate about. So I love that you've shared that. I am aware of time, and we could talk for hours. So thank you so much, Sue. I really enjoyed this episode, and I'm so grateful. I'm blessed that the divine has popped you in this space to help others and support others to navigate that journey as well.
Thanks, Leanne. I feel exactly the same way.
Thank you so much. Would you mind sharing where people can connect with you if they're interested in more about what you do, and where they can get a hold of a copy of your book?
Yeah, so I'll start with my website is at sueerhart.com, and that's where you'll find everything you need to work with me or to find further information about what I teach. And my book is available anywhere you prefer to buy books. So whether that's Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Walmart, it doesn't matter. My book is there. Lose Your Critic for Good.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sue. And I will put the links to your website in the episode as well. So please check those out, everybody, and hit the like and thumbs up button, and put a comment on the episode to let us know what insights have helped you and supported you on this journey as well. We'd love to hear that. For those of you who are interested in connecting with me further, please jump on my website, thebarefootmedium.com.au, or Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all of those social media places, The Barefoot Medium. Thank you all so much for listening, and we hope that you've enjoyed this episode of Barefoot with Spirit. Till next time, kick off your shoes, stay grounded, and be your divine self.